Imagine spending like 6 months memorizing a dictionary, just nailing every complex grammar rule on paper and feeling totally prepared.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah, right. And then you just completely freeze when a barista simply asks for your coffee order.
It's the worst feeling.
It really is. Your heart rate spikes, your mind goes entirely blank, and all those neatly organized flashcards suddenly mean absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
So today, welcome to the Deep Dive.
We're looking at why the traditional way we learn languages is, well, it's fundamentally broken.
Yeah, completely broken. We basically treat acquiring a new language like we treat engineering.
Right. Like it's a math problem.
Exactly. You get the textbook, you memorize the structural formulas, you pass the written test, and theoretically you have proficiency.
But that engineering approach is, it's incredibly comforting for the adult brain, isn't it?
Oh, totally. We love categorizing information. We want this clean binary system where we either know the rules or we don't.
Yeah, but language doesn't operate in a binary academic vacuum. No, not at all. It operates in a highly dynamic, often stressful social environment.
Which brings us to the core mission for this deep dive. We're taking a comprehensive, multi-part blueprint designed to take you from absolute zero to confident English fluency.
And it's a fascinating set of materials, really.
It is. And we are unpacking the profound psychological shifts and the habit-building techniques required to actually make that happen.
Because it completely shatters that classroom model. It pulls language learning away from academic memorization and recenters it on human psychology.
There's an analogy from the text that frames this perfectly. A building is never constructed by starting with a roof.
Right. You need a foundation.
Exactly. It starts by laying a single brick and then another. So as you listen today, your challenge is to view this deep dive as uncovering those foundational bricks.
And the overarching argument here is that language fluency, it isn't a test you pass. It's a physical and neurological habit you form.
But before we even touch on vocabulary or like daily routines, we have to address the massive psychological roadblock standing in the way.
The fear.
Yes, the fear. And specifically, the myth of the natural learner.
Oh, that is the biggest lie in language learning.
It really is pervasive. You watch a traveler effortlessly bargaining in a market, or, a colleague casually switching into English during a meeting.
And your immediate internal narrative is, well, they just possess some biological gift that I lack.
Right, like, oh, my memory is worse, or my ear just isn't tuned for it.
We create this illusion that fluent speakers just bypass the struggle entirely.
Because we only see the finished product.
Exactly. What we don't see is that every single one of those fluent speakers started at absolute zero.
They made mistakes.
Hundreds of them. They stumbled over basic greetings, they used the wrong verb tenses, and they probably faced a few really awkward stares.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Is the real barrier for adults simply that our ego is involved?
That is a massive part of it, yes.
Because I want to play devil's advocate here. We know neuroplasticity decreases as we age. A baby's brain is basically a sponge for phonetic sounds.
Right, whereas an adult brain is more rigid.
Yeah, so it feels reductive to say adults are simply too proud to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Whereas babies just don't care if they look silly.
Well, neuroplasticity certainly shifts, but the cognitive science strongly suggests our biggest hurdle is actually what linguists call the affective filter.
The affective filter, what is that exactly?
It's a psychological mechanism. When an adult feels threatened, like the social threat of sounding foolish in front of your peers, the brain releases cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Exactly. And that stress hormone literally blocks the brain's language acquisition centers.
Wow. So you physically cannot learn in that state.
Right. Now, a baby doesn't have an affective filter. Think about the baby learning to walk analogy from the text.
Oh, I love this part.
When a toddler is learning to walk, they stand up, they wobble, and they fall down. Repeatedly. But nobody in the room laughs at them or pulls the toddler aside and says, hey, maybe walking just isn't for you.
Right. People smile because the falling down is the data collection. It's an essential part of learning.
Precisely. The biological mechanism for learning to walk is the falling down. Mistakes are not proof of failure, they are proof of learning.
But adults, we attempt to learn a language the way someone might try to learn to ride a bicycle by, like reading a physics textbook.
Yes, you read about gravity and momentum. It makes perfect sense on paper.
But the moment you actually get on the seat, you crash.
Because you haven't trained your central nervous system. Adults harbor this deeply flawed assumption that we must achieve perfection in isolation before we speak.
We want to master the grammar workbook so we never have to look foolish.
Which is impossible. You only become better by speaking. Silence never improves speaking.
Which means if we're going to drop the adult ego and embrace this baby mindset, we also have to adopt a baby's method of learning.
Yes, which leads to the most controversial point for a lot of traditional learners.
Throwing out the dictionary.
Throwing out the translation dictionaries and the dense grammar workbooks entirely.
Which sounds like absolute heresy if you've spent years in a traditional school system.
I know, it really does.
I mean, if we aren't translating words from our native language into English, how are we supposed to know what anything means?
Well, this is where we have to look at how human memory actually functions. The brain is basically a narrative machine.
It likes stories.
Right. Evolutionarily, we survived by passing down information through spatial awareness and stories, not through abstract lists of data.
So handing someone a flashcard with the word apple on one side and a translation on the other.
The brain has no sensory or emotional reason to retain that information. It stores it in short-term memory, which is highly volatile.
It just evaporates.
Exactly. But think about the apple example from the sources.
Right. If you hear a story about a hungry boy coming home, he walks into a sunlit kitchen, sees this bright red apple on the counter, and takes a loud, crunchy bite.
Notice what happens neurologically there. When you imagine the crunch and that bright red color, your brain's sensory and visual cortices light up.
Almost like I was physically eating it.
Yes. You are building a robust, multi-sensory neural network around that new vocabulary word.
Whereas a translation dictionary is just a fragile little thread.
A single thread connection that snaps the moment you are under pressure.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I think learning a language shouldn't be like solving a math equation where you translate word for word.
Right, that just causes people to stutter.
Exactly. If I learn like that, every single time I want to speak, I have to run a complex mental algorithm.
You hear the English word, search for the native equivalent, formulate a reply in your native language,
translate it back into English, and then finally speak. And by the time I do all that, the conversation has already moved on.
That lag is the translation middleman, and it consumes an enormous amount of cognitive load.
It's exhausting. It really should be like watching a movie in your head where the images evoke the words directly.
And what's fascinating here is the neurological difference between memorization, which just stays in a notebook, and true acquisition.
Where it stays in the mind and becomes automatic.
Right. You hear dog, you don't calculate a translation. You physically picture a happy, panting dog running toward you.
You hear water, you picture a freezing cold glass of water.
Yes, and this perfectly explains why children will watch the exact same cartoon 20 times in a row.
Oh, which drives adults completely crazy. We think they aren't learning anything.
But the child's brain is doing heavy lifting. Repetition teaches the brain to recognize patterns effortlessly.
They are mapping phonetic sounds directly to visual actions on the screen.
Over and over until a connection is permanent. True language acquisition, zero translation required.
Okay, so knowing how to visualize words is great, but what exactly should a beginner visualize?
That's the real question.
Because the English language has hundreds of thousands of words. It's totally paralyzing.
Right, where do you even start? Well, the sources argue you apply the principle of the minimum viable vocabulary.
We don't need thousands of words.
Not at all. We assume fluency requires this expansive Shakespearean command of the dictionary.
Which is just not true for everyday life.
Research consistently shows a surprisingly small cluster of common words dominates everyday conversation.
Just a few simple building blocks used with confidence.
The absolute basics. Hello, hi, yes, no thank you, you're welcome.
And basic introductions, right? Like, what is your name? My name is nice to meet you.
Exactly, how are you? I'm fine, thank you.
I love the story they used to illustrate the tourist in London.
Oh, it's such a perfect example.
Well, there's this tourist. He has almost zero functional English. He walks into a shop, makes eye contact, and just says, hello.
And the shopkeeper says, hello.
The tourist points to water, says, water, please. Here's £2, pays, and says, thank you.
The shopkeeper says, you're welcome, and that's it.
It wasn't a long or, perfectly grammatical conversation.
But it achieved its purpose flawlessly. Two humans exchanged information and executed a transaction.
Without a single drop of grammar anxiety.
Right. If you are understood, you are using the language successfully. Communication is always more important than perfection.
I just find it so interesting that hello is framed as the most powerful English word in the world.
It acts as a new beginning, a catalyst.
Do you think we overcomplicate language by ignoring these micro-interactions?
Oh, absolutely. We tell ourselves that if we can't debate politics, we aren't fluent. But that tourist walked out with the water he needed.
He laid that first brick.
Exactly. But having established that core vocabulary, we have to transition to the mechanics.
Right, turning those basic words into automatic fluency.
Through daily habits. Because knowing the words is theoretical until you cement them.
And this brings us to the gym analogy.
Yes. Going to the gym once a month for 5 hours does absolutely nothing for your body.
You just end up incredibly sore.
Right. But 20 to 30 minutes every single day, that yields impossible to ignore results.
Consistency always beats intensity. 10 minutes a day of practice, walking the dog, cooking, traveling, is far stronger than cramming on a Sunday.
Because of how the brain works. If you cram, the brain categorizes it as an anomaly and flushes it out while you sleep.
But if you do it daily, the brain says, oh, this must be crucial for survival. Let's keep it.
Exactly. But sustaining this requires a major mindset shift.
Right, changing the internal narrative.
Yeah.
Because if I wake up and think, I have to study English today.
It feels like pressure. It's a burden, and your affective filter shoots right back up.
So you change it to, I get to learn English today.
Just changing that one word shifts it from an obligation to an opportunity.
Which leads right into the final super practical exercise from the text, the 7-day mirror challenge.
This is where theory becomes physical action.
The challenge is to stand in front of a mirror for 5 minutes a day, smile, and speak to yourself out loud.
Just saying things like, hello, my name is, I am learning English.
So what does this all mean? Does talking to yourself in the mirror actually work just because it forces you to verbalize without an audience judging you?
That is a massive part of it, yes.
Yeah.
You lower the social threat and avoid that cortisol spike.
You don't have that terrifying pressure.
Right, but there's a physiological reason too. Speaking improves speaking. The goal isn't to impress anyone.
It's physical conditioning.
You are physically training the muscles in your mouth and jaw to form new phonetic shapes, and you are building confidence.
Because silence never improves speaking. You have to willingly become the baby falling down on day one again.
Exactly.
Well, we have covered so much ground today. Language is clearly not a test to be passed.
No, it's a bridge to connect with millions of people. It unlocks travel and it builds incredible self-belief.
Small progress every single day is the ultimate key. You just need the courage to lay down that first brick.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, I think there's a really provocative thought to end on here.
Let's hear.
If language fluency is ultimately just a series of small, confident mistakes strung together over time, what other impossible goals or skills in your life are you avoiding?
Oh, wow.
Just because you are afraid to be the baby falling down on day one.
That is something to really mull over. Are you letting the fear of looking foolish keep you from participating in the world?
Don't let it dictate your boundaries.
Exactly. Embrace your mistakes. Go do that mirror challenge and keep learning. Thank you so much for joining us for today's deep dive. We will catch you next time.